Welcome to the latest episode of the More People podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hanwell, Managing Director for More People. I'm thrilled on this episode to be joined by Felicity. Welcome, Felicity.
Hello.
Felicity, for our viewers, please just give us a brief intro to yourself.
I'm a senior recruitment consultant and specialise in roles within the garden retail industry.
What drew you to recruitment in the first place?
I wanted to work for a company that was bigger. I get to speak to more people on a daily basis. At the time, I worked for a business where we'd generate sales, but I wouldn't get any commission. So I'd see the money coming in, but I wouldn't see the benefit. And then I thought, how can I earn more money? Recruitment was literally the next thing I thought of.
I guess recruitment is a massive multi-billion-pound industry. Everyone has a perception of it. I'm keen to ask, what was your kind of perception versus reality? What did you think it was going to be like walking into it versus what it has
It's very different.
Talk me through that.
I thought it would be very Wolf of Wall Street-esque, which is probably very cliche, and you probably do have that in some places, but definitely not here.
As an organisation, we cover off multiple industries, and from memory, you were coming in always specifically to the garden centre industry. Once you'd been with us a few weeks, we identified that was going to be your niche, and you were one of two. But what was your perception of recruitment into the garden centre industry, or your perception of the garden centre industry prior to joining ourselves?
I didn't think recruitment in the garden retail industry existed. I suppose when I used to think about garden centres, I'd just think about plants. I think it's obviously recruiting into the industry, and definitely since COVID, garden centres have boomed. You know, a lot of people spend their weekends there or going to different ones, and it's a lot more than just plants.
It's a big experience as well. If you go to some of the bigger centres, whether they're parts of big groups like Blue Diamond, BGC, or some of the larger independents, they're massive shopping malls. You know, they've got various different brands in there. It's not just plants. It's people are genuinely taking a lot of time there. And to your point there, you look at how people have upgraded their restaurants and what have you. I'm led to believe the industry is worth circa £5 billion now, which is a massive industry. But it is hard to recruit into the industry at times, is it not?
Yeah, very. I'd say, well, I suppose a lot of people are like me. It's a career change you don't think of. When you're working in retail, you don't think, oh, I could go and work in a garden centre, because a lot of people still perceive it as being just plants and you have to have plant knowledge, which, as you said, it's an experience now. You don't have to have plant knowledge. It's a lot more than just plant managers that I recruit for.
You've wrote articles and blogs and what have you on attracting the talent from the UK high street into garden centre retail. Talk me through how that's gone.
I've got a presence on LinkedIn, which quite a few of us do, and I'd say some of my audience are high street retailers. Half of them are, say, garden retailers, and a lot, they just don't think about it. They don't think about it, and you know, one of the attractions for a lot of candidates is better work-life balance. Okay. So if they're coming from food retail, they might not finish till 12 at night, or if they're doing later shifts, 1 o'clock. Garden retail, you're pretty much 9 till 5:30, alternate weekend working. So that is a big attraction for a lot of candidates, especially if they're coming from food retail.
The experience in general is a nicer experience than chasing around high streets and what have you. I think one of the things you highlighted in one of your articles or conversations was that you don't often think about career pathway when you think about garden centre industry, prior to either of us joining here anyway. Talk to me about some of the careers that you've seen blossom, pardon the pun, right, when you talk about some of these bigger groups or bigger independents.
There's one candidate I can think of that's now sort of running the garden centre. So they've come in, you know, grown with the business, they're now running the garden centre. Not everyone wants to progress in terms of management.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people are quite happy to just sort of come in and they want to learn extra skills. So whereas the business they're working for, they put them with a supplier for a day, or they go and work with a buyer in the garden centre to learn those skills. Not that they're going to be a buyer, but they now are exposed to that side of the industry as well.
Input,
and they're learning sort of where the products come from, what happened in the conversations and things like that, which I think a lot of people find very valuable and interesting.
And we speak about qualifications as well. That there have been examples of organisations putting people through haughty qualifications as well, right?
Yeah. They, sort of RHS levels. There's one business we work with that has to have an Ofsted inspection because they've got an on-site learning facility
Okay.
where people can gain qualifications, which I think is really impressive. Yeah, you can gain more than just a different job. You can gain qualifications as well if you want it, but you don't have to.
Okay. You've been recruiting into this space now for over 2 years. What have you seen change, or where have the demands been more prominent of late within your client base?
I'd say definitely more retail focused positions, so not necessarily the technical plant roles.
Okay.
So different businesses we recruit for, I'd say they have, a whole host of roles that I'd never even thought about before, and they actually want people from outside of retail to come in. So I'd say that's the difference I've seen. When I first started recruiting, it was more the technical. You need someone that has an RHS level, or you need someone that has X amount of years working as a plant manager. But now businesses are a lot more open as to background the candidate's coming from, and it is a lot, they want people from retail backgrounds to fill those positions.
The amount of business now within the restaurants as well, the restaurants within some of these garden centres are hugely impressive as well, right? And we're seeing a lot more demand come through for hospitality restaurant managers as well across independents and groups.
Yeah, independents and groups. And I think it's a very attractive place to work if you're from hospitality, you're used to working in a pub till, again, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're a chef there or you're a restaurant manager. You can go and work in the same hospitality still, but in a retail setting, and you get your weekends back to a degree, social hours.
In terms of some of the challenges that you faced that you didn't think you would have faced, you spoke about, obviously, perception, reality, and thinking it was a little bit more cutthroat than what it actually is. What are the challenges that you didn't think you're going to come up against that actually cropped up?
People are hard. They do silly things. They're not predictable. You think you've got a candidate that wants a job and everything's going well, and then just something really strange, random happens, and people aren't objects. You can't tell them. You can prep a candidate and tell them what to do in the interview. They go in and say something very strange, and it all goes
slightly wrong.
Yeah.
And I think managing candidates' expectations as well, whether it be salary, package, time off. When we talk about candidate generation, it's arguably the biggest part of your role. Okay, it is generating talent. Whilst we have adverts and we have a big marketing budget, a lot of your work is networking, right?
It's such a small industry, the garden retail industry. Chances are you'll speak to someone that knows someone else that knows someone else. So it's networking, talking to people, who knows who, speaking to suppliers, or this garden centre's looking for somebody, or they can do with someone like this. So a lot of it is word of mouth. Obviously, we've been around for 25 years, so the name is already out there. It's speaking to people from independents and groups, and it's amazing how interlinked everyone is. It's a huge industry. It makes a lot of money, but it's amazing how everyone knows someone. I had a candidate interview yesterday, and for a group, and the client knew who they worked for an independent, the candidate did, and the client knew the owners for sort of 20 odd years.
There has been at times, one of the challenges that I know you've come up against is when you've had candidates work in independent garden centres, a little bit of friction about joining groups. Is that right?
There's a bit of stigma, I think, that they'll go and join a group and they're not going to have the autonomy to do what they want within reason. They're going to be sort of stuck with a hierarchy and they can't go any further forwards. But I think garden centres, they're still small enough to be able to sort of talk with the people that either own the garden centres. I mean, I've example the other day, I placed a candidate for a group, and the owner was sort of down, speaking to them, having conversations. It was a newish garden centre that had opened. You have to educate people that groups aren't this big scary beast that you won't be able
not
to.
Not just a number, not just a.
And I think it's talking to people and letting them know, I recruit for groups and independents, so I'm not biased against which one is better. They're different, and groups won't be for everybody. Some people want to work for an independent only.
But I think on quite a regular basis, when you look at some of the groups, there is a blueprint without a shadow of a doubt. But most of the centres are really quite independent, right?
Yeah.
Or they were quite unique in their own offering.
Yeah, they you know, they run differently. Most centres are different sizes. Dependent on the group, there is a sort of structure in place, but you do get a say in what happens. You're not just sort of a body in a job,
Yeah.
and you've got to do this and go home. You do have a say in sort of how it runs, how it improves. They want people in jobs to grow the centres. They want,
Yeah.
you know, someone at the helm to get it to the next step. The groups we recruit for, they're constantly looking to sort of how they can improve, and they want people, you know, on board for the journey that's going to help it get there.
Yeah, they're constantly looking for people to step up, but when you are part of a group, you've got a much bigger buying power. You look at some of the millions of pounds of profit. So our group clients in the garden centre world are sharing, and what have you. There's a lot of job security there, and the whole garden centre industry doesn't show any signs of slowing down, right?
No, I mean, I think this would be my third year recruiting into the industry, and I think it's certainly my busiest year. And you know, people sort of say, "Oh, it stops in January. It's not busy." January is very busy.
Definitely.
I think it's, you know, that's a common misconception that I think maybe some of my friends and family have. Oh, you'll be quiet this time of year. No, it's so seasonal. There's something happening all the time, which is what I love and I enjoy about it. It's, you know, it just doesn't stop.
If we were to look back and go, right, like you say, you're into your third year of recruiting. If you were to offer advice to the 2022 version of Felicity walking through the door, what would be that advice that you would give?
Ask as many questions as possible. You know, be inquisitive. You know, the more you speak to people, the more you know. And the people in the garden retail industry, it's so friendly. You know, that was another misconception I had. I thought recruitment people would just tell me to politely go away, but everyone, you know, you ask someone for help, they give it to you. It's such a nice industry to recruit into. Niche but nice.
Niche but nice. There you go. Well, Felicity, you're doing a fantastic job. We love having you here, and we're looking forward to the next 2-3 years.